Awesome. All right, so we can kick it off. This is the first of what will probably be, I think, fortnightly or bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, I think is what we'll stick with as long as it's productive. But this is the first call for coordination around the KZG ceremony. So thanks everybody for coming. You guys are doing all of the work. I'm just helping to coordinate. So I'm very happy that we have such big brains on board here. I guess let's start with an overview of where we're at. Let me grab the agenda too, if you haven't seen it. Jeff, why don't you start with an overview of sort of the things you're working on and what you're going to be working on for the next few weeks. Or actually, I can start with the big thing, which maybe everybody is aware of, or I guess the audit chat is private. So we'll work backwards from there. So we have 2 audits tentatively scheduled. One in October with Sigma Prime, and another in August with SecBit. So I think they've both committed to audit both implementations, so Rust and JavaScript. But that's sort of what we need to work backwards from. And the good thing is we've already started on a lot of this, and we're building off of a lot of existing work. So I hope that makes our job easier. But that's sort of the context that we're working in. Jeff, do you want to just give a summary of what you've been up to for others in the group? Maybe give an intro, because maybe Hackspot, if you don't know anybody, feel free to ask, but I guess we'll just give intros just to start. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, okay. Just doing a sound check, because I'm finding you trying to breaking up a bit, and it's probably my crappy internet connection. So can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through. Is my audio good for other people?
Yeah. No issues with anyone.
Yes.
Everyone's
okay.
Good.
Cool. So yeah, Jeff, if you want to go ahead and give just intro yourself, and then
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the things I've been working on, I put in sign in with Ethereum, switched over from using GitHub OAuth. So that is that's working. I did another little change to experiment with how we present witness or contributor witnesses in a succinct manner, and that's using a blocky to as a visual check, to make a quick check that one contribution chains onto the next one. And I just use the normal blockies that you see used with Ethereum accounts, but that's kind of a placeholder in case we get something more exciting down the track. At the moment, I'm working on queuing, just putting together some architecture there. I mean, the queuing can, we could run with the queuing mechanism we've used in the past, but we've got room to improve on those. So so I'm looking at that.
How did the queuing work previously?
Just putting some picture. Sorry, Carl, didn't catch that.
Oh, sorry. How did the queuing work previously? When you say we could run with what we did in the past, what was that?
Oh, so there was just one queue if we got 500 people joining the queue would be 500 long and it would last for a week.
Okay.
And yeah, we did that with the last big ceremony we did, and we had like 3,000 contributions. But if a lot of people joined the queue and then dropped out because they didn't stay online for a week. So, we would have got another 30% or so from that number if we'd had a better queuing system.
Okay. And then you're talking about auth and DDoS stuff. What does that look like on your side? Like what tokens are you using? How's that being passed around? Because I'd like to standardize this as well. Like you're talking about GitHub auth versus sign on with Ethereum. But like, so does that get you?
Can you just repeat that?
Does that get you into the queue? And then you have a token, or what does that look like?
Sorry, you're breaking up. I didn't catch it.
Is this on my side or on Jeff's side?
I think it's on Jeff's side. Maybe if you want to write it in the chat or something.
Okay, I'll write it quickly.
Zoom just restarted for some reason.
Jeff, if you see the chat, he wrote it in the chat.
What does the auth token look like on the queue side? We're talking about so the authorization is done when a participant first signs in. So they have to do that before they join the queue. That's the anti-civil mechanism. So if they pass the anti-civil test, they then just click a button and join the queue. And we do have a token that can be reused at any time, so they can go offline and come back on with the same and get a token.
Okay, I'd like to turn that into a standard. If you're gonna have like the possibility for multiple implementations, then I think we need to have this properly defined. So
yeah.
Yeah, then I think we should sync up and see if we can add that to the specs, which I guess we're getting to a bit later.
Anything else, Jeff?
Not really, no.
Cool. Thanks for the update. I think Carl, if you want to talk about the spec a bit, maybe. So Carl is going to be, the general update is Carl is going to be helping me organize the technical side of this, because this is clearly out of my domain, my typical domain. I'm not usually running technical projects like this, so he's going to be helping me on that side. And the big thing he's been working on is the spec. So why don't you talk about, Carl, how you see the management of this going, what sort of goals you want to have, timelines, when you hope to have certain things completed by, like your best and worst case scenarios, thinking about when we have these audits coming in, and then you can jump into the spec about that.
Okay, cool, sure. I think first thing I want to start with a little bit of the philosophy of what I'm trying to go for with these specs. One is that I'm trying to keep them as simple as possible. The idea being that anyone can write up their own implementation and participate. So trying to use standard like RESTful APIs and like JSON files and that kind of thing, just to make things very easy. It's not going to be the fastest out there, but we're prepared to make some of the. Well, I'd like to make some of those sacrifices in order to enable all of this. Yeah, so that the principal goal here is just to have this be like the minimal set of things that need to be implemented in order for you to participate. In terms of timelines, I think one thing I'm realizing all of a sudden on this call is that Jeff and I have been working past each other a little bit. I think Jeff's implementation is running quite concurrently to this, so I think I'll be able to give a better update on that when we sync a little bit better on this. The specs themselves, Marius is going to write an implementation of them this weekend at ETH Prague, so I think that'll help flesh out some of the more idiotic bugs, which are definitely in there. I'd appreciate people putting some eyes on it. I don't know if you have a few free cycles, Kev, it sounds like Kobe's taking a look at it. So hopefully we can flush out some of the more obvious things in the next few days. Maybe by the end of next week, have some idea of what the basics are going to look like. Then I think it'll probably take another maybe 2 weeks to like harden it. I think the big thing that based on experience with the Ethereum consensus specs, the networking and APIs take much longer than you think. So I guess again syncing with Jeff on all of this and trying to implement all these things is going to be important. Yeah, then I'm not really sure where we lie on the implementations ahead of the audits, but I guess that would tie into that next. Does that really touch on what you're hoping to get through there, Trent?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the pretty much the updates there. One of the other things I think I'm trying to remove is much of the verification. Okay, yeah, okay.
For the, I'm assuming there will be one or more reference implementations. Are there any plans to write a reference implementation that is optimized for readability rather than performance? So one that's specifically written so that it's very easy to read, but it probably is dog slow.
I'm not really familiar with any, but I mean that would be very cool. Are you talking about in this case an implementation for a participant or for the coordinator?
For a participant, I think is the more important one. So that way, if someone wants to write their own participant implementation, which we want to encourage, it's easy for them to have something to work from that doesn't have all those, because as soon as you start adding optimizations, the code becomes very hard to follow and read very quickly. And so if we have one that's, optimization free for the most part, like just enough that it will function, I think it'll encourage more people to get involved with writing their own participant implementations.
Okay, well, if that's the goal of that particular implementation, then I think the specs are actually a good place to go. It's written in like mostly their Python sections, which, okay, I explain what needs to happen in text first of all, then there's Python like scripts that basically explain what needs to happen. And it's almost at the point where it's executable in and of itself. So I think that should make things very doable. The specs are also written in like two parts. One is things are explained once using like cryptographic/mathematical terms, and then again in code. And I think the hope there being that no matter what your background is, you can understand and approach this or help us find bugs in it. So hopefully that enables that. Again, part of minimizing the verification that I get participants to do is to try and make it simple for participants to be able to participate in. So Right now, you don't even need pairing checks to be able to do this. One of the interesting things is that we don't have like a standardized BLS API, and by BLS I mean the like curve for all the functions we need. So I just assume that exists, and I think this is one interesting thing for various participants they need to consider is are all the components available that they need. Tying into this a little bit, a question for Jeff on the benchmarks. What proportion of time were the subgroup checks taking relative to all the pairing checks in your benchmarks?
So the verification was very fast, a few seconds. Yeah, compared to minutes for the actual computation.
Interesting. That doesn't line up with my expectations, right? Because you should have to do one pairing per group per power, and it's one multiplication per power, and Trillium multiplication is much faster than.
Wait, you don't need to do one pairing per power. There's a way to batch the checks together.
Okay, yeah.
You also don't need to do a subgroup check, I think, as well, per group element. You just need to check one of them, and then the I think you call it a continuity check. That sort of implies that all of them are in the group if one of them is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'll update to remove the unnecessary ones there. Yeah. So that basically saying by using the correct construction of consecutive powers there, that if we know the first one's an element of the group, then all of them are in the subgroup.
Yeah, exactly. Cody said something. Sorry, Kobe said something about checking one ratio. I'm not really sure what he means there.
Is this the latest message he sent?
Yeah, I think he said you just need to check one power. I'm not really sure what that. I think he said one power. I'm not sure what that means actually.
I'm also rather unsure. If he means you only need to verify, like participants only need to verify the output as opposed to the intermediate steps, then sure.
I guess it's what guarantees do the participants need to ensure before they update the SRS is what I'm thinking. Like, do they just need to check that the SRS they received, all of the elements are in the correct subgroup, or do they need to do more than this? It seems that it sort of differs by ceremony.
Okay. I mean yeah, in this case, his low order subgroup as attack would work without subgroup checks. So I guess we do need prevent against that. I've just opened a branch that addresses that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm not familiar enough with other ceremonies to comment on why or why not these checks weren't included elsewhere.
Yeah, I think the. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just thinking for the check that they are all the correct powers. Can't you just do a polynomial evaluation or something like that? Like simply use KZG to check.
Right.
Like something like that should be possible, that you can do it with like 2 pairings or something. And a couple of multi-exponentiations.
I think that would work, but the batching check I think it does it with one pairing,
Mhm.
and you
Right.
just do, yeah.
I guess yeah. Mhm. Okay.
Maybe because for KZG, it sort of assumes the SRS is correct, while this, if you use KZG to commit to something,
Yeah,
to
but I
check
think
that the
you can also prove the reverse. I mean, obviously it's not directly KZG, but there's like you can prove
Right.
that if you do a certain random polynomial check, then the SRS must be correct.
Okay, right.
Something I would have to figure out, but I would bet that
Yeah.
you can easily get something like that.
Okay,
But
yeah,
the
okay.
check you have might already be just as efficient, like just thinking out loud here. Like,
Mhm.
and that should be
So-
pretty fast. Like that, even locally, you can probably do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here? Right. What's our longest? 2 to the 15, right?
So in total, 2 to the 16.
Yes. Yeah, 2 to the 16. Okay. Yeah, still it's still some computation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still nice to avoid it if we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the EB, the Schonbau implementation in Rust. I think, yeah, so the new Plonk implementations, they basically don't have this transcript linking feature, while the Schonbau implementations, the Graph16 ones do. And I believe he wrote a comment about this saying that they could avoid some checks by just making sure the transcripts linked. So maybe that's why. I can't remember exactly what I was reading.
What do you mean by transcript linking?
So in the Graph16 ones, they need this sort of non-malleability check, a proof of knowledge. With Plonk, it's quite simple. You just provide the private key. But with Graph16, you sort of need to hash every previous transcript as well. The proof of knowledge is a bit more complicated. And I think he said that once you sort of do this non-malleability check, you don't need to do another check, but I can't remember exactly what it is. Like that was a difference that I saw between the Graph16 ones and the Plonk ones.
Okay. When you find out what that is, if you can check in on or let me know about that, I'd be interested. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. And in terms of the specs, is it following the Graph16 version or is it following the newer Plonk versions?
I don't know. Honest.
So do we use a hash function in the ceremony anywhere?
No, not yet.
Okay. Oh, not yet.
So I guess only place would be for signing over your participation.
Okay, I think that's yeah. That sounds like the Plonk version.
Okay.
The graphs, yeah, it's a lot simpler that way.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll just check over the specs that you wrote, and then if I have any questions, I'll just ask.
Great. Thanks.
So Kev, you're working on a modified version of this in Rust. How much work, maybe you can give an update of where you're at on that, and then like how much work do you think it would take to match Carl's spec once it's done?
So currently it's finished, but it matches the Plonk version. So if Carl's spec is doing the Plonk version, I think it might just require like a few changes here and there. But
Gotcha.
if
Yeah.
it's the
It's the I think it's mostly like some small encoding things here and there, more than anything else. But yeah, it does. My specs line up fairly closely with your repo.
Okay, cool. That sounds good.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Anything else? We can just keep going on the agenda. I guess the Circom stuff is next. One important person who's not on this call is Jordy. And I guess what we've talked about is that he will need to make some updates to Circom. And he's at least agreed to do this. Handshake deal kind of thing. But do we need to, at what point do we actually need to get him to do that? Is that just before the ceremony, or does it need to happen much further in advance to match the spec?
What do we? Why SOCOM? What's their involvement here? I'm
Okay. Yes. So
I can't hear you, Jeff. You're breaking up too much.
My implementation at the moment is JS, which is
But I think Jeff might say that their
Yeah.
involvement is because he's
Bill-
using Snarky JS or Snark JS, which was written by them.
everything. No, frozen.
okay.
But it's possible to just basically have someone else rewrite the JavaScript version, following the specs, instead of needing Jordy explicitly.
Yeah, that might be easier.
Okay, sorry. So to summarize, we don't necessarily need Jordy, but there will need to be some library modification.
Right.
It would certainly need to be a modification to agree to align with Carl's specs. So the approach we thought, because I don't personally know the internals of Snark.js, so we were hoping to work with idem3 to make that aligned to our specs.
Is that to make it align, the current implementation align, or do you mean to add a new implementation that aligns with Carl's specs?
It is a new implementation, a variation on, it's an iteration on the existing one, but yeah.
Right, because I think they'll probably want to have a brand new version instead of iterating on the existing one, because the existing one is for Graph 16 and maybe they still want to have it there.
They would want to have it, yeah, but they could build on it and make it a KZG version.
Right, I think that makes sense. So they'll have two versions essentially in the repo.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Well, same repo, just a different set of marks, a different set of entry points.
Oh, I'm finding it hard to hear you.
So I mean,
currently.
that just seems like the easiest path to get there from where we are. But there are alternatives. We could write it from scratch or start with what you've got, Kev.
Yeah, it'd be good to know what sort of API is currently being exposed using the JavaScript implementation to see how much we could sort of just change the internals without messing around with what you're doing.
Yeah, that's the issue. It's all those web workers and the messages they're passing.
The web workers are for the multi-threading the WASM.
Yeah.
Right.
But the computation's broken up, you see, so you have to feed each individual section the right information.
Oh. I don't know, maybe if it's just the Rust library I was using, but the web workers were fairly straightforward. I'm not sure, maybe if Rust has a library that just made it work good.
Okay. You should check it out.
Yeah, I think it's by Google Chrome Labs, Rust WASM, sorry, Rust Rayon WASM bindgen or something.
Just to be clear, these libraries aren't described anywhere in the spec. Like there's nothing blocking work on that continuing.
No.
No,
No, it's not.
independent.
Yeah,
Okay, very good.
it only affects implementations. Well, only, but yeah.
And clarify something for me. So we've been bouncing between this past implementation that I think Jeff was using as a reference, and then Kev has a newer modified version. Have we settled on whether we're going with the modified version or the previous version? Or is it a third? Is there a third version?
I mean, I'm not familiar enough with the Jeff's implementation to be able to comment on this, and also who would like do all the upkeep and further work on Kev's one. I guess there's a fairly large difference between where it stands now, which is sort of implementing everything and then handling all the surrounding things around queuing and auth and all of that. And I don't know if, I guess it's up to Kev, I don't know if he's prepared to implement all of that.
So it's a third version. Technically, or there's three ideas for how this could look. Sorry, go ahead, Kev.
Oh, I thought Carl was gonna. Yeah, so I think there's currently 2 versions, and Carl's one lines up with the Rust one more. Is what I understand at the moment. And I'll just basically modify it to match whatever Carl puts in the specs. I think it might, yeah. So with the version that Jeff is using, it's going to take a bit more modification since it differs by quite a lot. In terms of doing the coordinator stuff, I'd probably prefer not to, to be honest. I can definitely expose the right API for the coordinator to be implemented by someone in JavaScript, for example. But yeah, I'd probably prefer not to mess around with the GitHub auth and stuff like this.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, I think I need to look at your stuff, Kev, and think more about what it would take to integrate that. And it's more than just getting it up and running in a browser. It's the whole, you've got to have it running in the back end, so there's got to be the verification side, and then we want a file that anyone can verify. So yeah, so we need like to make that public. The nice thing about doing this Snark.js is it's a commonly used library, anyone knows where to find it and they can just verify the files that we export.
Yeah, that's true. I think the verification code is quite like simple enough that people can sort of just implement it in any language.
Yeah, I would fully expect we're going to see verification code implemented in all of the consensus layer clients, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit less worried about that for now. I think part of this is a slight disconnect as to the like end users or like the people who expect to be actually verifying this. And that's less people implementing snarky things and more KZG, like this like very specific tailored KZG use case. But I mean, I guess one alternative that satisfied both is to someone could quickly write something that a tool that transfers between the two formats. But yeah.
Yeah, that's right. If we got that, it all sort of fits together.
To Jeff's point, I think, yeah, we probably need to standardize the file format that's going to be sort of outputted at the end of the ceremony. Is that already in the specs, Carl, or was you thinking about adding it?
Yeah, so I define a ceremony file, which is basically, because we've got 4 sort of sub SRSs being generated, there are 4 sub transcripts in there.
Right.
And that's basically just a JSON file with all the points in there. I don't think we should bother editing it between that and the final output. So there's a little bit of extra information that'll be contained in there from all the participants along the way.
Right.
But I don't think it's worth creating a separate version and then trying to keep track of that. Also, in case we ever want to run another round where we build on top of this Powers of Tau in 5-10 years down the line.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And you said that because there's going to be multiple ceremonies, does the coordinator reject a participant's contribution if he uses the same randomness in all 4 ceremonies?
Yeah. So the randomness has to be the like pub key I've been calling it, but basically your randomness is checked against all other participants in this particular ceremony and in all other, so this particular transcript and all other ones.
Right.
It needs to be unique across all of that, which I guess is quite a different check from the normal things you'll see in Powers of Tau ceremonies.
Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So we have an extra additional check by the coordinator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is important for us to make sure that we don't have the same power, like we don't have the same, or people who know all the like Powers of Tau beyond the degree that which we care about, right?
Right.
This whole
Right.
load proof optimization. Yeah.
I guess we could allow it, and then the random beacon that's added at the end could just be different for all 4 of them.
Are we adding a random beacon?
No,
I'm not sure.
Because the random beacon is public, right?
Yeah.
So then you can still compute more powers using the same beacon. Like you need to limit it inside the ceremony.
Yeah.
Everyone has to use different secrets for each of them, so that every single, like even one single participant doing this correctly and not computing any extra powers will limit the different ceremonies. You can't do it at the end. You have to do it like, yeah. It's basically for 4 different ceremonies.
Wouldn't it be the same if every participant apart from one of them contributed different randomness? So everyone did the same randomness for all 4 of them, and then just one person said, I'm gonna do the honest thing and do different randomness for each.
Right, yes. But yes, but I mean, but everyone should do different one, otherwise you're relying on the honesty of that one particular person.
Yeah.
Right, so you can just use a random beacon that's different for all 4 of them at the end, and then use this the setup after the random beacon.
I don't. The
You-
random
you-
beacon is
it's not-
public.
yeah, you're not adding anything there.
Right.
Still just relying on that one person. I mean, whether you add the random beacon or not has no effect.
You use this SRS after the random beacon, so it'll be different if you use different like public randomness for each one.
Yes, they will be different, but that allows anyone like
So-
because the beacon is public, you can compute higher powers from
Yeah.
it. So that's not enough to limit the powers.
If you are the one participant who was like who actually had different secrets, then you sort of know the relation between all of these, and you can take one of the longer setups, run it through the beacon for the shorter setups, and now you know extended sets of powers.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this check is necessary.
Have we covered most things at this point? Is there anything else, something someone wanted to bring up? Feel free to jump in.
What are we seeding the ceremony with?
I had assumed the Filecoin output, but I don't know why I'm assuming that. Maybe Danny mentioned it once.
Yeah, I have thought about it, and actually it almost adds nothing to do the Filecoin thing, because we want to like it would have the full powers. So for the degree check, we would still rely on our own secrets. So we might as well start from nothing. It's like adds a tiny layer of security.
Yeah, a little bit. One is that you could, if you did the largest, you sort of split up their powers and you put the largest setup with you line that up with the first set of powers, and then you use a higher power as the starting point for the second largest setup. You actually run out of powers.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, that's something you could do. Oh,
Yeah.
that's an interesting suggestion. Okay, we can use it. And basically we set, so I don't know, let's say they have 30 powers.
Yeah.
And we want 15. Then instead of using tau as our first power, we use tau to the 15.
Yeah. For the second.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, so we could do it. Yeah, we could use it for all of them. We just use the appropriate. So
Yeah.
for the 14, we use 16. For the 13, we use 17. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes
So
sense. Okay, then it actually adds security.
this works except for the way I've currently.
Oh, but then you know that works for the degree proof. But now you can do fractional polynomials like that have roots in them.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's still like, yeah, I don't know. Basically, the question is, does it add anything?
Yeah.
Or should we just start from like one?
Yeah.
I guess it's more of a social security that it adds when you say we're continuing from Filecoin. So now the malicious person needs to have corrupted both the Filecoin ceremony and the new Ethereum one.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily true, because we're relying on extra assumptions, basically. Because like that would be true if Filecoin had done this degree limiting thing and had given us exactly 12, 13, 14, 15 powers. But
All right.
so basically the assumption that either like that you have compromised all of the Ethereum and all of the Filecoin participants is not true. It might be enough to just compromise all of the Ethereum participants and be able to do some trick with a Filecoin setup to break it. Yeah. So.
And in addition to this, they all have the same tau across all of the inputs, right? So that fails the check we were just talking about, where there's a different tau for each of the sub ceremonies.
Right. So because of this degree check that you guys want to do, we can't really use anybody else's ceremony.
Well, we could, but it wouldn't add much.
Yeah.
And you got to do a hack to get around the fact you have to mix in some public randomness to get around the fact that all the tiles are the same. Otherwise, you fail the checks initially.
I mean, basically, it all comes down to the question: failing the degree check, like, does the ceremony actually have any security at all? And I think the answer might be no. And then starting from the Filecoin, security adds nothing.
Yeah.
If there is some security properties that are preserved even without the degree check, then it adds something. But I'm not sure if that's true, basically.
But wait, so what would you start off with? Because if you start from scratch, then you could
And
just start with the same
just-
generator.
You
Yeah.
can just start with the generator,
In the specs now, it's just the generator.
or you can start
Okay.
with power. Yeah, set tau to something, some public randomness, and start from that. That's also possible. Don't know if it matters. Yeah.
Right. Mhm.
Are there other previous ceremonies that would work if we had to, if for some reason we had to use one? There's no.
I don't think there would be any ceremony
Yeah.
that would have done this degree limiting to the degrees that we want.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely.
Okay. And public sources, something like DRAND, would that qualify? The
That's
randomness.
just that's just a beacon. That's
Yeah,
just a random
it's
beacon.
not adding anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wouldn't be useful.
Not really.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, that's the way you would what you would use for a random beacon to randomize the outputs. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a given.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing new here.
Okay. So it sounds like we're going to start fresh.
Yeah.
Overall, I
Yeah.
think it's sensible. I think, like, it just gives a false sense of security to start from Filecoin in a way, just pretending there's something that may
Yeah.
really not be something. Yeah.
Sorry, Micah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not worse.
Yeah. There's no downside.
There's no- yeah,
but
so I
there
might-
might also be no upside. Basically.
Yeah,
Very
but-
likely. Yeah.
I'll have a look at including it with I'll have a look at including it as the starting point. So yeah, if it doesn't detract, then may as well, kind of thing.
Mm.
All right. If it doesn't actually include a benefit, if it's net zero, then it doesn't make sense to include it just for show, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but we could include it and then just not shout about it. Like,
It's the-
Eventually somebody will be like, why did they include this? This doesn't work. And then you'd be like, well, we just did it just because.
Doesn't instill confidence in our cryptographers.
Right,
They're like, well,
right.
yeah, we just felt kind of like maybe it did something. We weren't sure, so we threw it in there. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I did have one more question that was on the note. Roughly, it was basically, I was saying that the attestation, what about making it a two-step phase? Because me just saying that I've participated, I could have participated and I haven't checked that it's been included, for example.
By attestation, do you mean like a public tweet saying like, this is my entry, or is this something more technical?
Yeah, so it's like a public tweet, but this doesn't mean that I've actually checked that my thing has been included inside of the final SRS. So I was saying that maybe we should add a two-step phase here. You attest that you've done it, but then you also later on maybe attest that it's been included.
I mean, if you just publicize what your contribution was, right? The blinded version of your contribution, then that should be fine, right? When you initially do it, then people can check it's been included. I'm not against this proposal. I
See what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think there is value in encouraging people to run the check themselves, and after the whole ceremony is done, and verify that the final output did include their stuff, even though someone else could check that from their earlier commitment. I think there's value in just encouraging, and from a social standpoint, just encouraging as many people as possible to actually run the validation step at the end. Because I know with the Aztec ceremony, if I remember correctly, like I don't think anyone except for Aztec actually ran the validation at the end. Like, you had a bunch of people participate and then everybody walked away at that point and no one came back to check it. So I think just having like, some meme value in saying, hey, I checked it and I'm posting on social media and I'm telling the world that I also verified this is valuable.
Okay.
I was going to say, is this something that happens after the ceremony, or can it happen concurrently? Like, can they be checking progressively and then doing this second tweet, or does it have to be after the ceremony?
Presumably, you'd want to make sure that the final thing did include you and it didn't fork some way along the way and exclude you. And so I think you want to do it after the ceremony is over.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good consideration, and it's definitely something like, I guess we didn't go over like the meta goals because I assumed everybody is at least up to speed on things, but like we want this to be the largest ceremony ever, and it has to be airtight. Basically, it has to be perfect because we don't want any sort of question about something that ends up in protocol. We don't want people to have any sort of shims to ask questions by. So that means, yeah, large number of participants, and the verification is also crucial. I think I'm not aware of other ceremonies that have emphasized this aspect as much. I've only ever seen, and the ones I've participated in, I just participated in X ceremony, but there's never this second step after. So definitely that'd be something I'd be interested in doing. Like after the ceremony's done, there's a whole nother social campaign about like, I just verified X ceremony.
Okay, so what's the easiest way for us to do this?
Well, I'm assuming it doesn't actually require anything of you, right? It would just be the social coordination at the end and having a mechanism for people. I guess actually I don't even know what verification actually look like. Does somebody download a file and run it? Is it just somebody can host a website?
That's sort of what I'm trying to get at here, is like, if you like tweeted about something in the past, right, then the information in the tweet, or like how do we get this information back into the whatever system's doing this checking? Like if you encourage people to download a file that contains like the little proof of their contribution, then people are going to lose that, and like it's not important. It's like the information is all out there. It's just some thought needs to be put into how do we encode this information to check it. Yeah.
Information in a way that they can pull it up, a week or a month later, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we have like a standardized tweet, then we could have something where it's like, paste your tweet in here and it will like verify that works.
And then they tweet the output from that tweet check or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, retweet it or whatever. So like you could do something like that. But I mean, if people are doing other things like signing in with the PGP keys or whatever, then it's so GPG keys. Sorry, yeah. Anyways,
I'm assuming we would also want multiple people to write verifiers. I think it's a little less important than multiple people writing the participation code, right? But it does seem like there is value in having not just a single reference implementation of the verifier, just in case there's a bug in the verifier.
Yeah, that seems good. But again, this I'm fully expecting to be in every client, and I think we're gonna have so many implementations of this, it'll be ridiculous. Maybe not ones with nice pipelines into Twitter, but things that just sort of read in the file and return true.
Right.
All right, we've got 1-ish minutes left. Let's talk about, so spec's gonna be done tomorrow or today. Completely done.
Absolutely.
Sent in the mail.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I mean, at least, so somebody's gonna hack on it this weekend and we'll tell you if there's any issues. I'm sure they'll find some. Marius is working on it. What's gonna happen over the next 2 weeks, really quick, before we meet next?
On my side, or on the spec side, I'm gonna squash those bugs. There's quite a lot of other things to build up and explain why things are necessary and why they're sufficient for the safety we require, and why we have these requirements. I think is also something that's rather left out. So there's quite a bit of just content to put in there. Then the API needs a lot of work, as in it's non-existent right now. I just assume someone will have that there. So I would like to sync with Jeff on all of that. So that's what's going to happen on my side from the specs.
Yeah, I guess the specs are the key focus right now. And then what would follow is the implementations. Kev will like figure out what differences exist and then make modifications to match.
Yeah, I'll probably just be looking over the specs while Carl is modifying it.
All right, Jeff, you want to, I mean, I have a pretty good idea. You'll probably just keep working on this stuff, but if you want to jump in, feel free.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to take a look at Kev's code and think what it would take to integrate that, get us get a better idea of where we're heading with that.
Awesome. Yeah, and I mean, Kobe jumping in is a huge help, but is there anybody else you want to review that I could pull in, Carl? I think previously someone mentioned Mary. I don't know if that's still a person we want to review the spec, or other people I could help you get.
I mean, I'll shout a bit about it on our internal cryptography teams, and get whoever has some free cycles to take a look if they don't mind.
Okay, that's probably the best spot.
Yeah, I'd like to clean things up a little bit more before I do that. Otherwise, I'm going to get lots of "you idiot." There's yeah. There are like 1 or 2 sections where it's just there's a header here, and I have a notebook full of issues which I haven't opened as physical issues on the repo yet. So it's a little bit early for that still.
All right, so you're telling me I should find these people anyways, just to give you a little bit of pressure.
Exactly, and pay them lots of money. So
Awesome. All right, yeah, we can wrap here. Thank you everybody for chatting and showing up. I didn't have like huge notes, so I don't even know if they'll be useful, but the agenda has a good overview of what we went over. But yeah, this recording will be available on like the Ethereum Cat Herders YouTube. But yeah, I'll see everybody in 2 weeks, and bring a friend next time if you think they could be helpful to something like this.
yeah, fantastic.
Right. See you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
See you, everyone.